Debut for Trey Savage. 9 strikeouts in his major league debut.
And out of the ballpark! Matt Olson has been swinging a stick of dynamite in the second half of the season.
It is Roberto Clemente Day as we honor one of the greatest players in big league history.
He was having himself a night when he started the game on the bench. Colton Cowser goes out to the opposite field. Come on now, Milkman. Pete Crow Armstrong unloads.
CCA perhaps has his groove back.
11 strikeouts for Simeon Richardson, the best start of his big league career.
Left field, and we are tied!
And the Phillies have retaken the lead. And for the second consecutive season, the Philadelphia Phillies are the National League East champions. And boy, did it come with some drama.
Judy Johnson. Now, he's not one of the big, tall guys that playing. He makes it feel like anybody can play baseball.
Well, and that's the beauty of our sport, because your physical stature doesn't dictate whether you can play this game. You could be the size of Josh Gibson, or you could be the size of Judy Johnson, who packed a lot in a small package. Judy Johnson, one of the greatest. We've got him at shortstop, but he actually played more third base than he did shortstop. So you knew his arm had to be strong, because you couldn't play third base in the Negro Leagues or shortstop in the Negro Leagues if you didn't have a gun. He had all this in a small package, and perhaps the most cerebral player ever in the Negro Leagues. He was a student of the game. He is credited with having discovered Josh Gibson. Yeah, their catcher had gotten hurt, and Gibson, who was a prodigy there in Pittsburgh, in the Industrial League anyway, and he's in the ballpark when the catcher gets hurt, Judy Johnson goes and grabs him. That other catcher never got a job back. So Judy Johnson also had a great eye for talent, but one of the greats of this league.
There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay, and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, French fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
This period, as good as some of these guys were, how did they feel about not being able to play?
It was seldom discussed. It was a foregone conclusion that you could not get there, so it didn't bother.
Did you feel that the quality of the game you were playing made up for the fact?
It was proven. They started carrying the group down Cuba. There was a prize for every position. The best hitter, the best runner, the best pitcher, and the Negroes won most of them. So finally, they stopped the big league pitchers from going down there. They couldn't pitch after about around in the latter part of October. You know, the World Series wasn't over but a few days before then. So in that way, Negroes that went down didn't play against the best pitchers. But they did until that time. And I think that was the reason to stop playing them. Stop the pitchers from pitching due to the fact the publicity was given down there and it came here.
The next 2-2. Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move in slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. Those other pods are so I'm chill like fro-yo. Focus like a GoPro. Ripping up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Bring something I know. No. Going. Yo, it's gone. Your heart just stopped. Cause Jake got strong and mighty. Undefeated. I mean it. Pull up the pod, scroll it down, then read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Tongue on your lips and eyes are spit backwards. Pick a tip, any tip, get on to it. I got ridiculous pods without forcing it. You sitting home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mix it smooth with the groove to make ears want to listen. And a little gut and a rhythm to back it up. Another shirt on my name, now watch me stack them up. You think another white brand bag, but this ain't no ad tag. My hobbies are rhymes, some people trying to be black, but that about time I come out, call the show. BKP, now let me turn it out, yo. Name take the snake for the 71. Date you know what time it is, I'm packing them guns. Yo, experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Kakalaki. Have podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's up, nerds? What's cracking? I echo the sentiments of the great spiritual leader and Jerusalem rabble-rouser Jesus Christ when he said, "Oy vey, it's good to be back." Welcome back to the dojo for chapter 183 in the historical and autobiographical review of the players, characters, moments, managers, stadiums, and all the pop culture references that have shaped our perspective and knowledge of this beautiful tapestry of life we call baseball. I'm Jake Robinson. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear me. I'm all tangled up in the web, brah. BKP is available on all podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your shows, and I will never charge this beautiful, loyal audience for any of the baseball content I offer up here at Backwards K-Pod. No Patreon, no Twitch, no hidden charges for bonus subscription shows. I take the ball every week, climb the bump, and give you everything I got in the tank. I know, I have the personality of a dead moth and a voice that sounds like I've been chewing on nails and doing shots of corn liquor moonshine, but this audience has embraced me, and this all-kilter guerrilla-style podcast show that is now heard in over 97 countries around the world now. You are my motivation to push on when I'm tired, when I'm down, when my various health ailments sap me of my energy and strength. I perform for you, brothers and sisters, the detractors, the critics, and I have my share. Fuck them. You can't please everyone, and I refuse to be creatively stifled by the fucking trolls and haters. Fuck them. I'm leaving the dream, opining the seams to the world, and because of this audience, I am truly humbled to be the gatekeeper of this game's beautiful and long, rich history. To all the OGs that have stood by me for the past 7 years in my independent journalist pursuits, as well as any of the newbies who recently found this wave surfing the net and decided to barrel up and ride it to the shore, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, and welcome in to the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm joined, as usual, in the dojo this week with my trusty compadre, the true king of the Robinson Gearing complex here, my boy, the famous felonious feline of ferocity, the chocolate tabby of tenaciousness, my boy, my man, Gunner, who was seated in the conductor's booth of our BKP time travel waiting to take us on this week's baseball adventure through time. We got more ground to cover this week than Omar Vizquel at shortstop in Jacobs Field. So if I get all of you stragglers hanging out the Terrapin Station platform to kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye, I can begin the final prep for the departure. As I gaze to the west of Terrapin, I can see clearly into our throwback retro jewel box ballpark, down that left field line that disappears into dish. The smell of grass, hot dogs, and beer, it overwhelms our senses as the hometown BKP9 have run out of the dugout and taken the field for today's contest. Our starting pitcher has gone through his machinations, his progressions, and warm-up pitches. The fastball's moving, the slider looks tight, the splitter looks heavy, he looks ready to go. The catcher has gone down to second with an absolute seed on the bag. The infield is tossing that ball around the diamond with a little swag and purpose. And the home plate umpire has cleaned up home plate and said those two magical words that echoes through the summer days and nights: play ball. As the visiting team's leadoff stick approaches the dish, that's my cue to get this train loaded up and headed down the track. I'm calling all aboard, as I will have Gunner set our time and destination this week for Snow Hill, Maryland, October 26th, 1899, for the birth and prominent baseball rise of one of the truly legendary Negro League ball players, Mr. William Julius Johnson, or Judy Johnson, as he's affectionately remembered. So, hurry, step right up, get in where you fit in. You can post up in our expansive lounge for the trip, or claim a private boxcar for our trip back to 1899 Snow Hill, Maryland, as Gunner is building up the necessary quantum speeds needed to crack 6.0 gigahertz of RF on our spectrum analyzer. He's creating these vast, anomalous, traversable wormholes that he will use to bend baseball space and time, tilting the celestial scales in our favor to get us back to the genesis of our story this week. And as the world is on the precipice of entering the 20th century, it is a time of expansionism and colonialism throughout the world, as the young United States of America is now considered a world power after the Spanish-American War that sees the U.S. take control of the Philippine Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and serve as a protectorate of Cuba. It saw the beginning of the Second Boer War, when the Boers of South Africa declared war on Great Britain. The bloody affair would take 2 years and 7 months to resolve itself, which the British won, prompting the dissolution of the South African Republic, with the Boers Republic being absorbed into the British Empire. It was a year of technological and political innovations, as voting machines are invented and approved for federal elections, an invention that would inspire passing the 17th Amendment for a direct popular election of senators. Henry Ford would resign from the Edison Illuminating Company to completely focus on mass automobile manufacturing and production. And, that's a real butterfly effect moment in his personal life, as well as the growing automobile industry. In sports, Hall of Fame manager John McGraw makes his managerial debut at the age of 36. The Kansas Jayhawks played their first basketball game with sports inventor Dr. James Naismith as their coach. And American bicyclist Major White became the first African-American champion in any sport after winning the world title in 1899. And this is the world that Judy is born into. Judy himself will go on to become one of the slickest fielding third basemen in the history of Negro League ball. Old-timers that saw him play for the Philadelphia Hilldales or the Pittsburgh Crawfords in the 1920s and 30s would inevitably link his name to Pie Traynor and Brooks Robinson for his fielding genius. The iconic mild-mannered owner and manager of the Philadelphia A's, Cornelius McGillicuddy, or Connie Mack, the tall tactician, as he's irreverently known, was once sitting in the A's dugout holding his customary lineup card rolled up in his right hand, and he's quietly observing Judy dance around third base like a Russian ballet dancer with his impeccable footwork. Well, Connie turns to Jimmy Fox and says, if only Judy were white, he could write his own price. The Negro Leagues had produced many quality third basemen during their heyday. Dudes like Jud Wilson, Oliver Marcelle, the Ghost, and of course, Ray Dandridge, whose body of work is the most often compared to Judy for the honor of top dog third baseman in the league's history. But many of the Negro Leagues gatekeepers of the game's history would give Judy the slight edge head-to-head. Ex-Negro League outfielder Paige broke it down this way. Dandridge was a little flashier with his leather, but Judy was simply a rock of consistency, a steady influence on the club, and the smartest guy by far in the clubhouse. Judy could anticipate. He knew what the opponents were going to try in any given situation. He had the intelligence, and he had a little finesse in his game. And he was one of the best guys around at stealing signs from the opposing team. He and Negro Leagues legend Josh Gibson, they had a whistle play that they would use to trap runners on third base who strayed too far down the baseline between pitches. And opponents began to realize that when Judy would let loose one of his high-pitched whistles, he and Josh were busy in the kitchen ready to cook some careless stiff at third base that wasn't paying attention to his surroundings. In Cincinnati during the 1930s, the Crawfords were engaged in an exhibition game against the Major League All-Stars teams, and Leo the Limp DeRocher reached third base, begins dancing down the line, trying to distract the Crawfords pitcher. But Judy, the consummate observer and student of the game, he realizes if the team doesn't keep this lip honest at third base, he's liable to steal a shirt off their backs. So that's when he gives Joshua the whistle. As DeRocher begins creeping towards home, Johnson moves up with him. And just as the pitch crosses home plate, Johnson backs up and stands about 2 feet in front of the bag. As Judy remembers it, Josh had the best snap throw in the league back then. He could stay to crouch and unload a pea to third base with his quick release. And the Limp was too late to realize that his ego had written a check that his ass couldn't cash. He stumbles back to the bag, only to slide into Johnson's awaiting glove for the pickoff and the out. Now, around 20 years later, Judy and his wife are leaving Milwaukee County Stadium after his son-in-law, Bill Bruton, as a member of the Braves, had just finished playing a World Series game against the Yankees. And lo and behold, he had a chance encounter reuniting with the Limp, who was also in attendance for the game. After exchanging pleasantries, Judy playfully needles DeRocher and asks him if he remembers the game in Cincinnati back in 1934. And Leo goes through his mental Rolodex of games, and he steps back with a wide grin plastered on his face, and through his lips, through his laugh, the Limp remembers that play, saying, "Damn your soul, Judy, that's the day you tricked me," and he gave Judy a big hug. While Satchel Paige was larger than life with his flamboyant personality, Judy was a model of consistency and quiet exuberance. While Josh Gibson was sheer, unadulterated, sheer belligerent power, Judy was finesse. And while Cool Papa Bell may give you something you have never seen before on any given day with his lightning speed, Judy was a model of consistency with day in and day out stellar play. Judy was well respected by teammates and opponents and remembered as someone who was respected for his quiet, unassuming leadership and his intellectual grasp of the intricacies of the game. He was quiet and shy, but mentally tough, and I'm honored to add his story to our collection here at BKP. And here we are, freaks, as Gunner has us tearing through that last reversible wormhole to our targeted time and destination of October 26, 1899, to a small, tight-knit enclave of a town along the eastern shore of Maryland known as Snow Hill, where proud parents William Sr. and Ann Johnson welcomed William Julius Johnson into this world, the third child in the family unit, after sons John and daughter Mary Emma. Now, official records and Judy himself cited different months and of his birthday in either 1899 or 1990 as his actual date of birth. As a firm date of birth, it's never really been substantiated or established. On interviews given by him before his death, he has said he was born in 1898, so that's my baseline for the story. But the actual date of his birth is still a mystery. Which leads me to this point. Thankfully, biographers were benefited by the oral history passed along to them, which included several interviews in later years. Many of those can be found on YouTube. Those interviews and biographies have shaped our understanding of Judy's life and career, as well as given us his perspective of his life in the Negro Leagues. To fully encapsulate and appreciate his greatness as one of the all-time great Negro League players, sure, his stats and the words from his contemporaries about his amazing play is important for sure, but the totality of the story about his career, about his life, would be incomplete without the context of his own spoken word. Thankfully, Judy's own words give us a larger lens to explore his profile, a widescreen view about the childhood events that would shape and mold his life as a professional baseball player and a Hall of Fame immortal. The interviews detailed his father's early expectations for his son's destiny, his emerging love for baseball, and the comfort and inner peace he found in the surroundings of his young life in Delaware, where his family moved around the age of 4. The things that would live inside him into adulthood and shape his career. Now, his father, William Johnson Sr., was a huge boxing fan and was a good friend with Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world. He was like the neighborhood coach. He had a license to train fighters, and he ran a local gym to train kids in the art of pugilism. Needless to say, Senior had high aspirations and dreams of training his son to become the next great welterweight fighter. But Judy never took to boxing the way his father had hoped. Back in those days, your parents told you what you were going to do in your life, and if you're a good kid, you do what's expected of you. And he would say, I wanted to honor my dad's wishes, but I hated boxing. My punches were awkward, and I hated getting hit. Plus, to add insult to injury, he made the 9-year-old Judy spar with his 12-year-old sister, telling him, you can't hit her in the chest or in the face. And, that didn't leave Judy with many options. So the older sister would pound Judy in the ribs, in the face. She was relentless, and Judy fucking hated it. One time, his sister's glove fell off her hand in the middle of a session, and she bends over to pick it up, and Judy, recounting all the beatings he had taken from his older sister, saw an opportunity and knees the sister in the face as she's bent over picking up her glove. My father jumped in the ring, broke it up before my sister could get her revenge, and later that night he told me I didn't have to box anymore if I didn't want to. Yeah, he was just looking for a connection between the two of us, but he begins to realize that boxing will never be the thing that connects us. But the father-son connection would blossom as Judy falls deeper and deeper in love with the game of baseball. His father's second passion in life. Senior was the athletic director of the Negro settlement house in the neighborhood, so Judy was always the black kid in the hood, always carrying around a bag of bats and balls. And in reflection, Judy can only assume that because he had all the equipment, the other kids would let him play. Because of Judy's own words, I really wasn't that good. When looking back on his baseball beginnings in Wilmington, Delaware, he remembered how baseball was his first love and how hard he worked to improve his game. As a young teenager, he joined a Wilmington team called the Rosedales, who played every Saturday against white and Negro League teams from around the town. All of us, whites, blacks, we played baseball every chance we got when I was a kid. We would walk to the ballpark at Second and DuPont and play for bragging rights and for the sheer love of the game. As his love for baseball becomes a healthy obsession, he quit school at the age of 13 while attending Howard High School to help with his family's economic hardships. He gets a job as a stevedore in New Jersey where he makes about $3 a week. Now, $3 a week in 1913, it has the economic spending power of almost $100 today in the 2025 economy. Now, Judy's player file in the Baseball Hall of Fame includes a fascinating document. It's kind of like a this is her life script that his friends used in later years to celebrate his retirement from Negro League ball. And in the script, those honoring him wrote, "And you were 13, showing an interest in organized sandlot baseball. You and several other fellows would meet at the home of Anita Irons, who was to later become Mrs. William Judy Johnson. While there, her brother Randolph Irons organized a team. You played baseball and you courted his sister. It was 1923. You two decided that the two of you could live cheaply as one, and Anita Irons became Mrs. William Julius Johnson. Judy and Anita would have a 62-year marriage. After his death, her death in 1985, Johnson was really never the same. In sorrowful reflection, he would later say, "She was the most important thing in my life, and even baseball was a distant second to Anita." Judy continued to work at Deep Water Point through World War I and playing baseball with a team in nearby Chester, Pennsylvania for his first gig in professional baseball, as the club would basically, they kick him out a few dollars and cover his trolley fare for the commute. While playing for Chester, Judy gets a wider exposure. He gets his first big break when World War I called many of the Stars' top black teams into service. And Johnson remembers how he must have impressed the manager of the Philadelphia Hilldales Club because he asked me to play with the team on Thursdays and Saturdays at their park in Derby. Sundays, the team would go to Atlantic City as the Bacharach Giants. They were still the same team, just in different uniforms. The playing time that Judy experienced was a product of player necessity and sharing during the war when rosters were depleted by call-ups or volunteering for the war effort. For his 2 days a week service for the Hilldales Club, he earns $5 a day, which is tantamount to around $110 in spending power here in the 2025 economy. And it's around this time that William Johnson is given the nickname Judy. In 1920, Philadelphia had a first baseman named Judy Gans, and people began saying we look like twin brothers. And when you know it, the boys began calling me Judy. At the conclusion of the Great War, with players completing their military obligations, returning home to claim their roster spots on the Hilldale team and other teams in the league, Johnson is assigned to play for the Madison Stars, a Hilldale farm team affiliate. So, over the next 2 years, he plays for the Madison club, with his goal being to make it back on the Hilldale roster. In 1920, he's told by Hilldale owner/manager Ed Bolton that he's impressed with all the hard work Judy has put into his game, and that he wants to sign him as a team regular. Bolton offers Johnson $100 a month in salary, and Judy accepts. Now, $100 in 1920, it has the economic spending power of around $1,600 in the 2025 economy. So, for a mere Benjamin Franklin, Bolton signed a kid named Judy from the Sandlots of Philadelphia by way of Wilmington, Delaware, a veritable bargain for a ball player with a psychotic obsession for getting on base. Judy was always looking for an edge, and he began to meticulously pull the seams out of his left uniform sleeve, the one facing the pitcher when he's in the box, so he could enhance his chances of being hit by a pitch. The Hilldale club had already had an accomplished third baseman in Brody Francis, but Francis, he knew that Johnson would be a strong addition for the club, so he takes the kid under his wing, even though he knows that Judy will eventually take his job. And he would take Judy through the paces, teach the youngster how to be a professional third baseman. And Judy is a raw talent. He has a slight build of 5'11", 150 pounds, soaking wet. He showed promise, but he was not an instant success. He batted only .227 in his first year. But Pop Lloyd takes a liking to Judy and would work with him, polishing his skills with his bat and in the field. Judy would also credit Pop for teaching him more about baseball than anybody in his life, saying Lloyd was a great teacher. He'd make you play your head off, and he always had words of encouragement after failure. In 1922, Judy is given a raise to $130 a month, which is worth around $2,600 in the 2025 economy, pretty much the average salary for a young player in the league at the time. And although this was paid only during the 6-month playing season, it put Judy on an elite economic plane in a middle to upper class black neighborhood, and he could always augment those earnings by playing ball during the winter months in Florida, California, or in the Caribbean. Thanks to Brody Francis and Pop Lloyd, Johnson absorbed his lessons at their feet. He learns quickly, transitions into the starting Hilldale third baseman throughout the 1920s. Judy's 9-year run with Hilldale was kind of an unusual anomaly for black ball players back then. Many players would constantly transition from team to team for a myriad of reasons, like club stability, level of compensation, or even clashes with the ownerships and management. As one of the most stable black organizations with strong ownership, Hilldale becomes Judy's home. Coupled with his local roots and the mutual regard he and Bolton shared with one another, Judy would be a foundation piece for the Hilldale Ball Club from 1921 to 1929. Now, as for Ed Bolton, he was a black entrepreneur from Philadelphia, and he was an influential presence in the Negro Leagues universe. Hilldale was not a member of Rube Foster's 1920 formation of the first Negro National League. Instead, they remained on the outside and instead focused on the transformation of the Hilldale Athletic Club into a full-time business operation. By remaining on the outside, Bolton had total control over game scheduling against strong opponents. He enforced high moral standards from the players and the fans in the stands. He ensured competitive pay to his players and he booked some of the finest baseball venues around at the time. And all of these reasons offered the players on his team an attractive environment to play in, and Judy, without hesitation, ingratiates himself into the community, team, and town. The Hilldale Club began in Darby, Pennsylvania, originally as a team for youth players. But Bowden is a business manager and part-time owner of the Hilldales. He incorporates the club, and with the proceeds of a stock sale, he buys a field and he builds a 5,000-seat grandstand, which was usually full of paying customers. And Judy remembers how the field had the best playing surface in the biz, ground balls were true, and you very seldom got bad hops in the infield. In essence, Judy was fortunate to play for one of the best independent black teams around. In and around Philly, the Hilldales booked games against both white and black teams. He enjoyed the security and competition against tough local teams of all races, and he really enjoyed the fact that almost every night he could return home to Anita, who was always waiting at home for a hero. Although Judy's legacy would best be remembered for his days with the Negro National League juggernaut powerhouse teams in the Pittsburgh Crawfords and the Homestead Grays during the 1930s, it would be in Philadelphia playing for the Hilldale Club where Judy would make his name. The 1921 season marks Johnson's first full year with the Hilldale team, and his stats were less than stellar. He bats .268 and 97 at bats, but with the help of Francis and Pop, he solidifies his spot on the team. Hilldale finishes first among the collection of Eastern Independent Negro League teams, outpacing their Atlantic City rivals, the Bacharach Giants. In 1922, he improves to a .280 batting average and 125 ABs. In 1923, the Eastern Color League is established to counter-program the Negro National League and the plethora of Midwest teams. The Eastern Colored League created a haven for Hilldale and a crop of league teams sprouting up along the East Coast. The new league's charter members were Hilldale, the Bacharachs, the Brooklyn Royal Giants, the Baltimore Black Sox, the Cubans, and the Lincoln Giants out of New York City. Hilldale wins the first league pennant running away, but no postseason series could be arranged given Rube Foster's animus for the Upstart League and the player raids that were carried out as the league's Midwest teams during the year. The 1923 season saw Judy's batting eye improve, and he's now the starting third baseman for the Hilldale Daisies. That would be the first time he would face Major League talent when he played 6 games against 2 different squads of teams featuring Major Leaguers, many of them from the Philadelphia A's, who finished the season in 6th place. The Hilldale team would dismantle both teams, winning 5 of 6 games, providing a stunning climax to their amazing season and propelling them to the forefront of the Negro baseball brand. This would not be the only time that Judy would play against Major League talent. Many white players at the time were fond of barnstorming versus black teams in the offseason to make, a little more Skrilla. And the biggest stars of the Major League would make almost as much money playing against black teams after the World Series as they made during the regular season. Judy would proudly say, I played all the big league stars of my day from Babe Ruth on down. Judy's barnstorming play against major leaguers is far too extensive to fully document on this week's biopics, but one of the series worth noting came after the 1926 World Series clash between the Cardinals and the Yankees. The Hilldale Daisies play an American League All-Star team that includes Heine Manouche, George Byrne, Jimmy Dykes, and pitcher Lefty Groves. Now, the box score records are incomplete, but what is available indicates 3 Hilldale wins against 1 loss to the All-Star team. And Judy finishes the tournament with a scintillating 374 BA. In 1924, all the ego and bad blood between the Eastern Color League and the Negro National League was put on the back burner as the winners of each league promised to play the other rival league's champion in the first Colored World Series. When the dust had settled in both rival leagues, it was Judy's Hilldale Daisies who edged out the Baltimore Black Sox by 3 games to earn a matchup versus Negro National League champions, the Kansas City Monarchs. And that 1924 Hilldale team was rock solid consistent during the year and never lost more than 2 games in a row. Judy goes off, taking veteran ownership of the club with his level-headed leadership and swing, smashing line drives all over the yard, batting an impressive .337 with an 895 OPS and 300 at-bats. Still, though, the Daisies go into the inaugural series as huge underdogs to the powerful Monarchs and the more established Negro National League. As per the agreement set by league owners, the first series will be put the best of 10 game format, with the games being played in 4 cities rather than just in Philadelphia and Kansas City. On October 3rd, 1924, Game 1 of the series kicks off in the city of brotherly love. Judy goes 2 for 3 with a double and a walk, but the Monarchs strike blood first, winning the game 6-2. The Daisies punch the Monarchs back in the face in Game 2 as Judy stays hot, going 3 for 5 with an RBI and 11-0 ass-whipping the filthy team put on Kansas City. The series then moves to Baltimore for Game 3 at Maryland Park. The game ends in a 6-6 tie and is called due to darkness at 13 innings in the book. In the game, Judy continues to cook. He goes 3 for 7 with 2 doubles. Game 4 is once again played in Charm City, and for the first time in the series, Judy is held hitless in 3 at-bats. It would be teammate Ruth Curry coming out the bully and throwing 6 2/3 innings of scoreless baseball to secure a 4-3 win over the Monarchs. The series now shifts to Kansas City for Game 5, and Hilldale wins again 5-2 to take a 3-1 lead, with Johnson continuing his scorched earth policy against Monarchs pitching, going 3 for 5 with 3 RBI. With his 9th inning line drive smash over George Sweat's head in center field to drive in 2, cracking open the pitching duel by Monarchs ace Bullet Rogan and Daisy stud Nip Winters. The Hilldale Club had their hands around the throats of the Monarchs, and they looked poised to rout the Negro League champions, but they lose Game 6 6-5. Johnson stays hot at the dish, going 2 for 4, drives in 3 runs of Hilldale's 5, and now has a series BA of 481. Game 7 in Kansas City was another win for the Monarchs, 4-3, despite Judy going 2 for 5 and scoring 2 runs. The remaining 3 games took place at Chicago's Southside Park, with the series tied at 3 games apiece, with 1 tie. Kansas City won 3-2, and only for the second time in 7 games, the Monarchs pitching kept Judy's back quiet. Hilldale was ahead in the game 2-0 in the bottom of the 9th, only to see Daisy's starting pitcher Rob Curley fall apart as the Monarchs walked it off in a victory. Hilldale won Game 9 to tie the series at 4 wins apiece. With a Game 9 at a 3-3 in the top of the 9th, Judy leads off the frame with a double, and then he would put his high acumen and baseball instincts on display when he scores the eventual game-winning run after an unassisted ground out to first base. And so it comes down to Game 10, with the first Negro Leagues world title at stake. Unfortunately, Hilldale, they ran into a buzzsaw as Monarchs pitcher Jose Mendez twirls a 3-0 absolute gem of a masterpiece, and for just the third time in the series, Judy goes hitless. Despite falling short in their team goals, Judy can take solace in his effort that produced a 3.1 batting average to lead all batters on both teams. After such a stinging defeat, Judy spends the offseason obsessed with rectifying the championship loss. By the end of the campaign, Hilldale finds themselves in a World Series rematch with the Monarchs, and they would find redemption beating the Monarchs 5-1. The first 4 games of the series go down in Kansas City, while games 5 and 6 take place in Filthy. Johnson would go 6 for 24 in the series, but it was still instrumental in several of the Daisy wins. In Game 1, he triples and 2 runs at the top of the 12th inning to spark a 5-2 Hilldale victory. The Monarchs won Game 2, 5-3, but Judy's lead-off Game 3 with a single, and he later scores on a double off the bat of Pete Washington to defeat the Monarchs. Hilldale didn't lose again, winning Game 4, 7-3, and then winning 2-1 and 5-2 in Philadelphia for 5-6. Both times, they were sparked by big hits from Hall of Fame catcher Biz Mackey. After the World Series victory, Johnson travels to Florida to play some winter ball, and Florida was one of those several prime venues for ball players during the winter months, whether they be black or white. In fact, most Negro League ballers, not so much Judy, often received larger paychecks in the winter because their regular ball clubs often struggled financially and couldn't afford large contracts with guaranteed money. The Hilldale franchise and flourished financially, and Judy rarely made more money playing winter ball, but it was comparable. In Florida, the prime destination was usually Palm Beach, where 2 hotels, the Breakers and the Ponciana, hired elite all-black ball players to play for their team and wait on tables and entertain their guests. The rivalry between the 2 hotels was intense, but it was the money-making opportunities that lured the players there, as the pay and the tips earned were excellent as well. In 1926, Hilldale fails to win their 4th straight league pennant, finishing second to the Atlantic City Bacharach Giants. The Atlantic City team went on to play the Chicago American Giants, who trailed the East Coast team 3-1 before staging an epic comeback to snatch the World Series title 5-4. Although Judy finished the year with a productive .316 average, he was beat by an errant pitch, and the injury affected his batting over the next few years. After getting hit in the head, Johnson's average tumbled below 300 in 1927 and 28, but he rebounded in 1929 and hits .390. In 1928, the Eastern Color League imploded and collapsed. When several teams in the league, they ran out of operational money, Hilldale played 64 games that year, finished with a record of 35-28-1, and at the age of 28, Judy posted a mediocre .242 combined average between Hilldale and a team of colored all-stars. In 1929, Hilldale moves to the short-lived American Negro League, masterminded by Cone Posey. The league consisted of 5 former Eastern Color League teams: Atlantic City, Baltimore, the Traveling Cubans, Hilldale, and the Lincoln Giants, with the independent Homestead Grays joining the circuit. The Baltimore Black Sox would win both halves of the season and were awarded the league pennant. That year, Judy mounted a comeback of all sorts from his horrendous 1928 season. He has .365 with a .651 OPS and 72 RBI. Johnson's superlative play in conjunction with Hilldale's ascent was but the eye of a perfect storm. The key to Hilldale's success during the 1920s rested on the small but powerful shoulders of Judy Johnson. The relationship between superstar and franchise was a win-win union made in baseball heaven. The combination of a large black population with a strong team, amazing ball players, and top-shelf liquor quality ballparks, and enabled Philadelphia and Chicago to reign supreme as the most consistently profitable franchises in Negro League baseball during the decade. After the season, he continued to relocate south to Florida and Cuba to play winter ball. The money was just too good to pass up. From 1926 to 1930, he would spend his winter months playing baseball in Havana, Cuba. He would terrorize league pitching, but his teams would always fall just short of winning a pennant. Finally, in 1930, his last year playing in the Cuban League, his team featured Negro League stars Martin Digo, Pop Lloyd, Dick Lundy, and Clint Thomas, and he finally captures a Cuban League pennant. And check it out, nerds. With the roaring 1920s coming to an end, along with Judy Johnson's playing career for the Hilldale Daisies, this is the point in the race when I pull my candy apple red Ferrari into the paddock, switch out these soft compound tires for a batch of hards before I race back out the grid and chase the podium finish with this week's profile dig into the life and times of the Negro Leagues legend, Judy Johnson. After I pay some bills, hook up my boy Gunner with a little catnip for a great first segment, let me rip a couple of tubes, hydrate, lock myself back into the Captain Kirk chair before engaging on acts 2 and 3 of the Judy Johnson saga beginning in 1930. Keep it locked right here at BKP. I'll BRB, quick, fast, in a hurry. Meet me on the dark side of the moon.
Breaking the news. Hanging on, baby. I ain't no fool. Looking at the sky.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. Yet today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. When you look around, wouldn't you consider it a privilege to associate yourself with such a fine-looking group of men that is standing in uniform in this ballpark today, when you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so you can have an education and build your body? It's a blessing. But I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Outstanding opponent.
American Giants, ABCs out of Indianapolis, Kansas City Monarch, Chicago Giants.
And what kind of crowds did draw?
Well, Kansas City was about the best drawing town, was outside of Chicago. Chicago, well, I'd say Chicago and Kansas City about the best drawing town. We'd have probably 8, 10, maybe sometimes 15,000 people there.
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Geek, executive producer of Backwards K-Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fishing hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks. And one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Mom, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There is also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summertime shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
I love to teach baseball, and because they don't get the proper training as they should have, because nobody's interested in things. They're interested in the 1st and the 15th. That's payday.
And the check in.
Yeah. And they don't take the time to teach the kids like they should. When I was going down with the Phillies in training, if you would do something wrong in your training, I would stop all practice right then and go out and explain to you what you had done wrong. But now they have their clipboards and you mark, the players are marked with numbers, like you might be number 10. And I see something I didn't mark it down. I would go out and demonstrate to you your mistake.
Okay, Breaks. Welcome back into the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. And this is Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Now, this week, we've been examining the life and the career path laid down by the great William Judy Johnson along his road to baseball immortality. And our story this week begins at the turn of the 20th century when Judy is born in Snow Hill, Maryland, a small town along the eastern shore of the state. By the time Judy is 4 years old, the Johnson family unit moves to Wilmington, Delaware, and his father was a boxing trainer who had ambitions of molding his son into the next great welterweight fighter. But Judy doesn't have the passion or the testicular fortitude to be a pug, and he tires of the indignity of having his older sister pound him during sparring sessions, and eventually his father, who trains kids for a living to do things they never thought possible, well, he realizes that his son just doesn't have the passion for the business, so he lets the boy figure out what his passion in life is. And Jude quickly finds out that he has a fascination with the game of baseball that's sweeping the young nation. The fascination, it evolves into a full-blown obsession, and because his father was the athletic director of the local Negro settlement house, Judy has access to bags bats and balls. And the kids in the hood, they got no choice but to let the diminutive youngster join them on the sandlots of Wilmington, Delaware. Around 12 years old, he joins a local sandlot team called the Rosedales, who play 2 days a week against other local teams of all persuasions and races. And by the time he's 13, he quits high school, works as a stevedore in New Jersey, and a few years later, he begins playing semi-pro baseball in Chester, Pennsylvania. His evolving game gains wider exposure playing professionally in Chester, and in 1914, when World War I pops off, many of the black players on the Negro League rosters were answering America's call to arms, and the loss of talent and created a void for young players to fill, young players like Judy. So Judy hooks up with the Hilldale Daisies in Philadelphia to play 2 days a week for $5 a day. When the war ends, players begin returning home and claiming their roster spots, and in 1918, the team sends them to play for the Madison Stars, a Hilldale farm club. Judy takes the demotion in stride, begins to work even harder to make it back to the Hilldale club. 2 years later, club owner and manager Ed Bolden was impressed by the focused energy coming off the young prodigy, and he rewards the young Judy with a roster spot on the Hilldale team attached to a $100 a month salary. And that was more money than Judy had ever had in his possession, but money was never really his motivation, as years later he would quip. The club gave me $100 a month, but honestly, I would have played the game for free. I just love playing baseball. Players like Brody Francis and Pop Lloyd, they take a liking to the prodigy. They take him under their wing. They help him develop his game for the next few years. And his relationship with Ed Bolden develops into one of the... it's a relationship that develops into one for the ages, especially in the context of playing Negro Leagues baseball players and owners is concerned. Many players were motivated by money, and they wouldn't think twice about selling their services to an owner down the road, throwing cash at players to help them sell the game. And Judy never had these concerns in his 9-year stint at Hilldale. First of all, Bolden had the savvy to stay independent and remain outside of the Negro League National League fraternity, and this actually made the team one of the more stable, profitable entities in black baseball. It gave Mr. Bolden the opportunity to keep overhead costs at a minimum. It gave him more control over team scheduling, and it kept the team solvent as they would take on white and black teams alike, mostly from the local market. Their fields were always top-notch, the stands were routinely full, and the players were well compensated for their production. The stability and treatment received by the owner, it appealed greatly to Judy Johnson, and the talented third baseman prospect makes himself right at home in Darby, Pennsylvania for 9 seasons from 1921 to 1929. The first couple years are a struggle, but with the support of Brody, Pops, and Mr. Bolden, Judy's game evolves into a dynamic, toolsy package of speed, defense, powerful line drives in the outfield gaps for extra bases. You add in the high baseball intelligence, and you got yourself quite a formidable weapon in your baseball arsenal. During his 9-year run at Hilldale, the team won the Eastern Color League pennant 3 times, appeared in the first 2 Negro League World Series to the Monarch of Kansas City, losing the first matchup 5-4, but they would get their sweep revenge a year later when they drubbed the Monarchs 5-1. Now, granted, most of the stats and daily box scores have been lost in the sands of time, but his recorded stats for its time at Hilldale say he accumulated a 14.1 WAR and 709 games, a 329, 375, 419 slash line, and a 121 OPS plus. By 1928, The Eastern Color League collapses under the heavy weight of clubs losing money and going bankrupt, and the Hilldale franchise moves to the short-lived American Negro League established by Homestead Grays owner Cum Posey. After 2 years of suffering through a concussion after being beamed by a pitch in 1926, Johnson abused league pitching in 1929, hitting .365 with 72 runs batted in, sparking Pittsburgh Courier sports writer W. Rollo Wilson to proclaim, "Judy Johnson is the best player in every respect on the Hilldale Club, and he's unquestionably the best third baseman in all of the Negro Leagues. In fact, he is quite simply the most valuable player of all on the field that I saw this summer. If any of you had the chance to see him play and noted his pep and ability, you will understand why I chose him over the rest." In 1930, with the Great Depression adversely affecting many black entrepreneurs and their Negro League teams, Cum Posey maintained the Homestead Grays as an independent entity, which, like the Hilldale Club, only enhanced the Grays' financial stability. The Homestead Club played most of the games in and around Pittsburgh, keeping their travel expenses down, and Posey made sure that the team garnered a reasonable take from the gate whenever they played on the road. Posey, though he sees opportunity in the country's economic collapse, and he begins to raid other teams hard, acquiring talented young stars with salary offers that no one can compete with. That year, he signs both Judy Johnson and Oscar Charleston from the Hilldale Club to stack a powerful lineup that already featured heavy hitters and Vic Harris, Buck Ewing, and Smokey Joe Williams. W. Rollo Wilson lauded the signings in the Courier, suggesting that Johnson wasn't really ever fully appreciated by the Derby fans and their owner. The Grays barnstormed their way through the 1930 baseball season with no league in place. Negro League teams would play each other in catch-and-catch-can bases as the club used contests against sandlot teams as schedule filler. The aggressive road travel had a profound impact on Judy's memory of the year that he spent with the Grays, and it felt like the team was always on the road. Every day up and down the mountains and hills of Pennsylvania, we'd average like 100 miles every 2 hours with up to 9 guys in a car. Clubs and organized Negro Leagues were not technically barnstorming during the season since they played a formal schedule against league opponents. But for independent teams, more than half of their 200-game schedule, sometimes 2/3 of it, were contests outside of the realm of the Negro Leagues. These Negro clubs kept the promoters around the big cities busy, booking them on their off days from league play, usually against all-white semi-pro teams within driving distance of the city where they happened to be staying at that time. And the term within driving distance was liberally defined. Sometimes these trips were sometimes as far as 200 miles away. For all of you that use the metric standard of measurement, 200 miles is equivalent to 321.869 kilometers. After reflection, he really remembers how brutal Sundays were during the 1930 season as the Grays played 3 games every week, usually in 3 different venues around central Pennsylvania. After the first game, he would be on the bus with choice words directed at management as every guy on the team was tired from the early morning games. But by the time the second game was getting ready to start, the boys were changing their gear, take the field to win another game with no thought or care given to the current exhaustion. A technological advancement, it added to the demands of the game at the time as night games became a thing in 1930. The invention of light systems, it created a demand for evening baseball so that teams could attract more fans from the working class. The additional gate receipts contributed a new revenue stream, but it also added additional games to the daily grind. The new technology, it was flawed and uneven at best, and it posed a real safety risk to the players. Outfielders would run around barely able to see their teammates at their position, and if a fly ball went above the lights and you lost track of the ball, outfielders were forced to cover their heads for the protection of having a fly ball bounce off their nuggets. The new lighting system that sprouted up in ballparks all over America during the 1930s generated more money than ever before, and it was a game changer of historical proportion in sports. But the greatest contribution that lights offered to the game that no one ever talks about is how they played a part, as well as Judy Johnson, for introducing Joshua Gibson to the baseball universe. Josh had become a local name in the burg since 1928, playing for the Pittsburgh Crawford Giants, which at that time was merely a neighborhood boys team, a precursor to the vaunted Pittsburgh Crawford squad that Gus Greenlee quickly develops into a heavyweight juggernaut through sound acquisitions and aggressive scheduling. On July 25th, 1930, the Kansas City Monarchs roll into the Steel City to play a game versus the Grays at the House of Thrills, the majestic Forbes Field, in a midsummer marquee matchup guaranteed to be a major event in the black neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. The Monarchs had their own transportable lights, and they brought them along to play the game under the stars. Now, before taking the field, the Grays, who had never played under the lights before, huddled up in the dugout trying to figure out how they would pass signs to each other with limited visibility. Catcher Buck Ewing, in particular, was frantic, wondering if his pitcher, Smokey Joe Williams, would be able to see his dark fingers from 60 feet 6 inches away. Sure enough, Williams would misread a signal from his backstop, and he crosses him up. The pitch was thrown with enough velocity that it splits Ewing's hands wide open, and the hands began dripping blood. The Monarchs' backup catcher was playing right field that day, and he refused to move behind the plate for fear of suffering the same injury as Ewing, or even worse. So, out of the corner of his eye, Judy notices Josh in the stands, watching the game with a group of boys. And he recognizes Josh from the local newspapers and was aware of the youngster's powerful exploits, and he yells out to him from third base, "Hey, young man, can you pitch this game for us?" And without missing a beat, he responds back, "Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson, sir, I'll play." And, we had to hold up the game for a couple minutes while I ran into the clubhouse and threw on a uniform. And that was Josh Gibson's introduction to the world. It was a relationship that lasted 15 years from this day up until Josh's premature death in 1947 at the age of 35. Like Brody and Pops had done early in his career at Hilldale, Judy takes a mentor approach with Josh, and they could be seen after every game sitting together in the clubhouse, chopping up the game's results together and rehashing their individual play. Judy's coaching skills became widely appreciated throughout the team, and while composing was listed as the field general, Johnson's role in the team became one of being a coach on the field. At the end of the campaign, the two top teams of the Independent Eastern Color League were set to face off in a World Series tournament organized by Pop Lloyd. The New York Lincoln Giants battled the Homestead Grays in a format where the first team to win 6 wins and a possible 10-game set would be declared the champs. The Grays won 6 games to 1 in a series that was highlighted by a mammoth shot off the bat of Josh Gibson in Game 7 that left the old Catholic Protectorate Oval in the boogie down BX and leaves the building. Judy would never forget watching that moonshine clear the tarless reaches of the stadium before clearing the facade and leaving the building. A much anticipated matchup between the Grays and Cool Papa Bell, the St. Louis Stars from the Negro National League champs, it never materializes though. In 1931, Judy returns to Hilldale as a player, manager, under new owner John Dew, who brought the franchise after the 1930 season. The prodigal son's return to the city of brotherly love was underwhelming to say the least, due to Hilldale's shaky financial condition at the height of the Great Depression. Hilldale business model of controlling its own booking arrangements, it was no longer tenable. The team could not arrange enough games on their own against solvent opponents in front of decent crowds, which led to its financial collapse in 1932. After the Hilldale implosion, Judy signs on with the Pittsburgh Crawfords, who, with the addition of Judy, gave them a formidable lineup. That same year, Composi establishes the East-West League All-Star Game, a one-season venture that would, the East-West League World Series, a one-season venture that would be done by June. The league was the first to merge East Coast and Midwest teams. Posey had taken a firm stance against Gus Greenlee and the Crawfords Ball Club because of Greenlee's continuous raids on other team rosters, and he refused to let the Craws into the fraternity. The Crawfords finished third among independent teams in 1932, and they book a 7-game series against the Casey Stengel All-Star team, an all-white team with a roster full of major leaguers. The games would be played in York, Altoona, and Pittsburgh, with the series wrapping up in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Crawfords win the series 5-2. In 1933, Greenlee spearheads the establishment of the second iteration of the Negro National League. By then, Crosstown Robles Homestead, they were in a precarious financial straits, and they were unable to hang on to their players. Greenlee and the Crawfords lured away stars Oscar Charleston and Josh Gibson from the Grays. Charleston becomes the Crawford manager, with Judy Johnson serving as a team captain. And that was the first year of the first East-West All-Star Game, a Negro League spectacle that ran until 1953. In some seasons, there were 2 games played, and the event was held annually at Comiskey Park in South Chicago. It was Greenlee's greatest contribution to Negro League baseball, as the event became the most visible competition in black sports in America at the time. Greenlee stacks his Eastern squad with 7 Crawford players on the inaugural All-Star roster, but they fall in defeat to the West, 11-7. To his credit, Judy plays in the game. He has a pinch hit single in his loss, and he doesn't play in the All-Star game during 1934 and 1935, but he makes an appearance in 1936, his final season in the league. For the record, he goes 1-for-2 and drives in a run in the East's 10-2 victory in that 1936 game. From 1933 to 1936, the Crawfords are a Negro Leagues dynasty. Royalty champions every year except 1934, and even in that year, the Crawfords had the best overall record despite finishing second to the Philadelphia Stars and the Chicago American Giants in 2 separate halves of the season. The Crawfords had a well-financed infrastructure for a Negro League team in the 30s, and Greenlee is able to attract and retain the likes of Judy, Gibson, Oscar, Cool Papa Bell, Sam Bankhead, Satchel Paige, and Double Duty Radcliffe for many of those years. The 1935 Pittsburgh Crawfords are arguably the greatest Negro League team ever built. They finished 10 games in front of the Columbus Elite Giants, Philadelphia Stars, and New York Cubans. They won the first half of the season and beat the second half winners Cubans, who were managed by the legendary Martin Digo in the Negro League National League Championship Series 4-3. In the early months of 1937, after 4.5 years with the Crawfords, Johnson is the subject of many trade rumors between the Grays and the Craws. Greenlee is feeling the pressure from local law enforcement on his illegal numbers business that undercut his finances, so he proposes sending Judy and Josh to the Grays for $2,500, which is it's worth about $56,000 today in 2025. Reportedly the largest sum to date in black baseball. The blockbuster deal was consummated when Johnson and Gibson were dealt to the Grays in exchange for junior men's catcher Pepper Bassett and third baseman Henry Spearman and $2,500 in cash. And the trade, it pisses off Judy. He's less than enthusiastic about the homestead rigorous barn single schedule, and his pride is wounded when he begins to believe that, basically he was the throw-in for the trade. He abruptly leaves the team, moves back east, plays for the Philadelphia Redcaps of the Middle Atlantic League, but eventually he hangs up his spikes for good. Johnson returns home to Delaware, where his wife Anita and him buy a house in Marcelltown, and that would ostensibly become his home in retirement. In the immediate years that followed his retirement, he held numerous jobs, including as a supervisor at Continental Can Company. He and his brother bought and operated a variety store in Millside. He drove a school bus for a while, and he worked at Mullins Department Store and security. However, his baseball days were not over. When Jackie Robinson broke the color line in 1947, the slow integration of black ball players is beginning. Some Negro League players, still in their prime years, signed on with Major League clubs, while others become scouts. Now, Judy would become a member of that latter group when the Philadelphia A's and Connie Mack employed him to scour the standout fields for the next wave of black star ball players. And like I said in the opening segment into Judy's life, Connie had been an admirer from afar in the 1920s when the A's barnstormed against Judy and the Hilldale Daisies. Not only was he amazed by the stellar play and footwork at the hot corner by Judy, but he also paid close attention to how Johnson interacted with his teammates as an on-the-field coach, trying to get the most out of his mates. In 1954, Judy becomes the first African-American Major League coach when he shows up at A's training camp to ease the transition of two black ball players on the A's roster, and Vic Power and pitcher Bob Trice. Before his death, Judy would wistfully reminisce about the several promising players he encouraged the A's to sign, a list that included Hank Aaron, Larry Doby, Minnie Mignoso, and I could have gotten Henry Aaron for $3,500 when he was playing for the Indianapolis Clowns. I got my boss out of bed. I told him we need to sign this Aaron kid right now at a fair price, right now. And my boss cusses me out for waking him up at 1 a.m. He says to me, $3,500, that's way too much for an unknown quantity. And I just kept shaking my head in disbelief. I could have had Doby, Mignoso as well, but I got vetoed. And in a real butterfly effect moment, Judy would often wonder aloud if the A's had got Minnie, Larry, and Hank. Then their output would have been set for the next decade to have, and just maybe the A's would be the ones still playing in Philadelphia, and the Phillies would have been forced to move out west. The A's rejected many of his players' suggestions, but he remained committed to the prospects that he did sign, and he admitted to giving tips to rival scouts just so that every kid would have the chance to play, unlike the chance that he ever had. When John Quinn, the Braves GM, was hired by the Phillies in 1959, he asked Judy to join his front office staff, and would remain with the organization as a scout and spring training coach until 1974, when his health begins to limit his ability for heavy travel. While there, Judy discovers one last great talent who would go down as a Phillies legend, Richie Allen. And I told Quinn, that's the best looking prospect I've seen in years. Please don't lose that guy. Greasing the wheels of history for the Phillies to lure the future icon. After his career was finished, Judy spent the years reflecting on his journey. He was never once in his life bitter that a gentleman's agreement prohibited from playing with the best players in the world. When asked if Negro Leagues was major league quality, Judy would offer an honest and pragmatic opinion saying, day in, day out, no. But of course, you could have picked up enough players and threw them on a couple rosters that would have competed in each of the major leagues. And he would go on to say that the great Hilldale teams I played on in 1924, they would have belonged at the AAA level. We had some positional players that were not quite major league caliber. But Johnson never forgot his Negro League roots. And they were the only avenue to play the game he loved, regardless of how much he believed he could perform at a high level in the majors, saying, those are my happy days, and I don't regret 1 minute of it. In 1971, in conjunction with Commissioner Bowie Kuhn, the Hall of Fame formed its first committee on Negro League baseball leagues. Monty Orange chaired the committee, whose purpose was to identify Negro League legends deserving of induction. Johnson himself was one of the 12 voters and an ad hoc member who met to select players. After spending 4 years on the board, Judy steps down and the committee immediately recommends his own induction in 1976, or 75. He became the 6th Negro League legend to earn inclusion after Satchel, Josh, Buck Leonard, Irvin, Cool Papa Bell. After naming Judy a Hall of Famer, the committee elected 3 more players in Charleston, Lloyd, and Digo before disbanding in 1977. Unlike many of the Negro League legends who were later inducted into the pantheon of baseball immortality, Johnson was still alive and able to accept his plaque with his wife, Anita, and his adopted daughter and niece, Loretta, and her husband, Bill Bruton, in his corner. On August 18th, 1975, Commissioner Kuhn and the Baseball Universe, they welcomed Judy into the Hall of Fame with Ralph Kiner, Bucky Harris, Earl Averill, and Billy Herman. And he was the first player from Delaware to make the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And for fact's sakes, he has since been joined by Rick Willis, a dead ball era pitcher at the turn of the 20th century for the Boston Beaneaters and Pittsburgh Pirates. He was voted in 1995. So the state of Delaware now has 2 members in the vaunted pantheon of immortals. Judy suffered a debilitating stroke in 1988, and on June 15, 1989, he would die as a result of complications by the stroke in Wilmington, Delaware. His home, the William Julius Judy Johnson House and Marshallton, was added to the National Registry of Historic Places, and Judy Johnson Field at Daniel S. Frawley Stadium in Wilmington is named in honor of him. In 2019, a memorial statue in his likeness is unveiled and dedicated to his town of birth in Snow Hill, Maryland, and it sits in front of the neighborhood library as a tribute to the life and career of the third baseman that tennis legend Arthur Ashe called in his biography, A Hard Road to Glory, the standard by which all third basemen should be measured against. And folks, I think this is where I'm going to drop the curtain on the Judy Johnson audio biopic. But before I pop these mics down to our next work, I'll walk through history. Let's take one last look at those so legendary numbers and accolades the great Judy Johnson left behind on his Hall of Fame resume. Now, before I dig into his stats, give you some clarity, some transparency here. You need to understand that there's a lot of history and box scores when it comes to crunching the numbers of Negro Leagues legends that just aren't there. And I should tell you that I use the Baseball Reference Seamhead app to accumulate my data. I find them to be the best at piecing together the rich history and numbers of the Negro Leagues. And as you listen to this pod, right now, they are hard at work acquiring data and the evolving nature in the history of the Negro Leagues. So with that being said, William Julius Johnson, a.k.a. Judy Johnson, born October 26, 1899 in Snow Hill, Maryland, died June 15, 1989 in Wilmington, Delaware, buried in Silverbrook Cemetery in Wilmington. In 1923, he makes his Negro League debut with the Hilldale Daisies in Philadelphia. 11-year Negro League baseball career for the Hillside Daisies, Pittsburgh Crawfords, Homestead Grays, and the New York Cuban Giants. The two-time East-West Negro League All-Star, 1925 Negro League World Champion, 13.7 wins above replacement, signed 709 recorded games under his belt, 2,884 plate appearances, 467 runs, 809 hits, 152 doubles, 40 triples, 25 home runs, 457 RBIs, 75 stolen bases, 5 times caught, 1,116 total bases. A 304, 350, 419 slash line, a 6.769 OPS, and a 140 OPS plus. In 1975, he becomes the 6th player from the Negro Leagues era to earn inclusion in the National Baseball Hall of Fame by way of the Negro Leagues Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamen of all ages, this has been the story of a man named William Julius Judy Johnson. I want to thank all you nerds for lending me your ears this week into our dig into this legendary baseball career of Judy Johnson, as this show is a mere baseline profile into the man's legacy. There's a lot of stuff out there on the web that may give you a broader view of his life, and I implore you, take a look at it. As for me, I'll be back before you know it with some more of that baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
And I'm going to keep it consistent like Kyle Schwarber, as my dude Gunner has us racing up the tracks to get you all back to your loved ones, patiently awaiting your return to Terrapin Station. I can see the Judy Johnson bio getting smaller and smaller in my rearview mirror. So, with that, I turn my attention to I never say die baseball hydra. I reach underneath my kimono, pull out my katana blade, and I chop the head off that beast, only to see 2 more baseball topics appear in its place. Next week, even though he is the all-time White Sox franchise leader in home runs, doubles, RBIs, base on balls, on-base percentage, and slug, Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt, was an anomaly, a contact hitter trapped inside a slugger's body. Next week, we're going to do an in-depth autopsy on the baseball journey of the Big Hurt, Frank Thomas. But y'all know how I roll by now. That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their story. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless and win the day. Biddy biddy see. I came, I saw, I kicked this show's ass. Parents, if you see your kid looking bored and unproductive, do yourself a favor your kids will remember fondly. Take those little monkeys outside and play a game of catch. Me and my boys Charlie Guns, we're throwing up our Gunnar Hendersons high in the sky, y'all. That's our number 2s. As in peace. The Big Hurt, Frank Thomas on deck. Sounds fun. Can't wait. See ya.